Good afternoon. I am Saad Al-Aziz, the owner and head instructor of Semper Fortis Jiu-Jitsu here in San Antonio, Texas, and here to tackle this week's question of the week. And this week's question of the week was my thoughts on mandatory rolling in class or mandatory sparring in class. And in general, I'm just not for it. I don't require people to spar in class. I encourage you to develop to where you feel comfortable rolling and sparring in class, because that's the best way to really test your skills, is to roll and you're going, basically 100% against a partner who is also going 100% against you. And it really gives you a feel for like your jiu-jitsu and what works and what doesn't work, and it'll help put you on a path to development. But it's not necessary to roll every single class, and it's really not beneficial to really start rolling until you've actually learned some jiu-jitsu. So there are a couple things that I do that are different than other schools, but I'm not here to say that the way I do it is better than what somebody else does. Other schools, it's mandatory that you roll in class, and that's part of the class, and that's great, and that's the way they do it. But I'll explain why I do what I do. So one, most of my classes, we do not roll during the class. I teach instruction. We do a warm-up, then I do the instruction, and then we drill the techniques throughout class, and then after the 1 hour class, I do an open mat for anybody that wants to stick around and roll afterwards. And then they can roll for as long as they want, whether it's one roll or 10 rolls. It varies. The reasons I don't do it during class there's a couple of them. One, I don't like to have new students who have never trained jiu-jitsu sparring during class. I want them to learn jiu-jitsu and then start to apply it. Because really, I have no idea what their background is or what they might even try if I put them in class. There's a famous photo of Elio jumping in the air doing a kick at Carlos Gracie, and they're on like a mountain in what I assume is Brazil. Well, if a person doesn't know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, maybe they took some Taekwondo classes, and next thing you know, they're on their first day of class. They thought, shoot, I saw the picture of Elio kicking Carlos. Maybe I'm going to start this roll off with a kick. And so there's, I want them to learn jiu-jitsu and then start sparring. So I'm never a fan of somebody rolling right away. And then I always try to be somebody's first roll when they come to our school. And I either want to be their first roll or I want to be able to watch their first roll to make sure that they have habits that and practices that are going to fit into our school, because I don't want people to do dangerous stuff to my students and injure my students. So usually if I'm their first roll, or at least if I'm able to watch their roll, I can sort of determine like, hey, this person gets it, they're a safe practitioner. And if they're not, I can immediately correct them on the spot. And that way my students aren't getting injured by somebody that's just doing crazy stuff, because I'm interested in the welfare of my students. The other reason I don't roll during class is from time to time I get people who are victims of sexual assault or domestic violence, and they come here to be students, and they're not ready, and sometimes it'll take a while before they're ready to really spar against other people. And so instead of like spotlighting that person and saying, oh, this person doesn't spar during class, it's like, well, nobody spars during class. So they're not being put in an uncomfortable position until they're ready to participate. And then, so they do the class, they learn the techniques, and then after class, when they feel ready, then they can start sparring with partners of their choice. And so that's one of the reasons I do that. The other reason is people who are injured, I want them to still come train. So like based on what your injury is, you might still be able to do a lot of the techniques in class. And so if I was doing active sparring in class, you would be less likely or less inclined to come to class. But you come to class knowing, no, we're just doing techniques and we're going to do drills. So my injured people are more likely to come and participate in class. And then last but not least, like I turned 54 this year. So in a few months, I'll be 54 years old. My body will not allow me to train and spar every single class, because I teach an 11:30 class every day and I teach a 7 p.m. class every day. And when I was in my 30s, even in my 40s, I could spar both classes. But now in my 50s, my body's like, hey man, we can't do it. And then I got other students, who are older like I am, and they want to train every day, but they just can't spar every day. And so those are all some of the reasons, or most of the reasons, why I don't have mandatory sparring. In jiu-jitsu, we call it rolling. Every other art calls it sparring. I'm not even sure how the term rolling came up, but rolling and sparring mean the same thing. So I'm not a fan of mandatory sparring. I think when the person is comfortable and they know their bodies, when they're like, hey, my body can do this today, or my body can't do this today, or I'm comfortable doing this, or I'm not comfortable doing this. And that's when I want them to roll and spar, and I want them to do so safely. So that's the reasons why I don't have mandatory sparring in class. So that's it for this week's question of the week. And if you have a question for next week, you can feel free to fire away. I think I've already got a couple of questions in waiting for me to answer that I'll be tackling. And have a great week, and look forward to training with you soon. All right, ciao.